Welcome to the CFO Show. I'm your host, Melissa Howitson, CFO of Venna. Amid economic uncertainty, finance teams are often under pressure to find cost savings while also having more work landing on their plate. Outsourced accounting models can be a great solution in this case. Not only can they help you with achieving cost savings, but they can be a great way to elevate your access to talent that you might need and allowing your team to then be freed up to focus on strategic and long-term thinking. Joining me to discuss this topic is Dani Sandler, VP of NetSuite Accounting and BPO Services at ScaleNorth. He has over 20 years of experience leading finance and accounting teams and is particularly adept at work process efficiency. Thanks so much for joining me today, Donnie.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to understand a little bit more about your firm, ScaleNorth, and what you do and specifically the area that you work at for the company.
ScaleNorth, we're a NetSuite Solutions provider as well as an outsourced accounting provider. So we have about 300 employees. We're one of the largest NetSuite consulting practices in North America. So we offer the sales and licensing of the platform, consulting and optimization, some custom development, and then outsourced NetSuite accounting. And that's the business line that I run.
And what would be the typical size of the companies that ScaleNorth would work with?
Really, we're sort of mid-market and maybe a little bit lower. So we have a couple of startups and ranges all the way up to, I would say, from a revenue standpoint, about $350 million in revenue. Our average is probably around the $30 million company on average.
Can you tell me a bit about your experience prior to joining ScaleNorth? What was the journey like that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's been a journey. So I'd say the first half of my career was a split between public and industry accounting. So I started in audit. I did some management consulting for a while. Then I had an opportunity to start a business, a logistics transportation business with a couple of colleagues of mine. And we grew and scaled that company for about 6 or 7 years. As I was exiting that company, I had a chance to reconnect with one of my audit pals from years earlier. And he and his business partner had started ScaleNorth about 1.5 years before that. So we reconnected to go to a concert one evening, and the timing was right. We were catching up on everything, and they were looking for someone to come in and basically lead and grow the outsourced accounting team. So timing was awesome. And 5 years later, here I am.
Wow, all that over a concert. Who was the concert for?
It was Tool. So not sure if you're a fan, but it was an amazing show and a good memory for us to talk about.
Oh, that's fun. It's funny how those relationships from early days in our careers have their way of coming back along the way. When you think about outsourced accounting models, what in your experience are some of the primary drivers that would make a company want to look at this as an alternative?
You mentioned earlier that business leaders are under pressure to do more with less all the time. And top accounting talent just seems to be getting more scarce. I recently read an article. I think the number was about 53% of folks had either left or moved a job in the previous 18 months or were planning on doing so in the 12 months ahead. So the ability to hire and retain top accounting talent is tough. Additionally, we're finding that a lot of companies are looking to scale and grow and eventually acquire debt or equity or potentially exit, but their books are not in order to pass a due diligence, let's say. And so they're really looking to professionalize their accounting organization, and finding the right talent in-house is tough. And the right outsourced accounting provider could be the answer to those problems.
Absolutely. You certainly see that happening with what's going on in the economy, yet there's still the work that needs to be done. And I also think sometimes when I think about my own team along the way and you're thinking about what is the right way to scale this team, sometimes there's a job to be done, but it's not a full-time job. And you need parts of different individuals. And sometimes you get really lucky. You can find somebody who can span a bit wider, especially for a mid-sized company where they could wear different hats, and sometimes that doesn't work. And I think that's where, having that ability to buy a portion of a full-time equivalent so that you get the experience you need, but are not compromising or putting somebody in a role that is only partly what they really want to be doing as well when you try to mush too many things together. So I think lots of different places where that applies, and certainly in the current backdrop makes a lot of sense. Now, are there any specific industries where you've noticed an uptick in this being a preferred model?
Well, I'd say based on our experience, it's really across the board. Our client base comes from a variety of industries. We've got many service-based, professional service industries, many product-based companies. That is one thing, and it may be because the NetSuite platform lends to do well for product-based companies, that probably 65% of our client base is somewhere within the supply chain, whether wholesale, distribution, or manufacturer, or even e-commerce.
And you talk about NetSuite as being really the sweet spot where your company plays. Are all of your clients on NetSuite?
Yeah, that's a niche for us, and it really adds particular value of expertise. So all of our clients are operating on NetSuite. The only exception is if our firm is implementing NetSuite, and then we might bridge their accounting function on a different platform until we go live on NetSuite.
Because that's an area you specialize, presumably that's a skill set as well that some of your clients in particular are looking for, is not just, can you help me with the accounting or the processes, but also bringing to bear some of that prior experience with NetSuite. Do you have some examples where that really plays out in favor for your clients because they can leverage those experiences you've had at other companies using the same system?
Yes, certainly. I mean, what we bring to bear is essentially the collective knowledge base of our entire team. So while you might have three or four folks working primarily on your account, you really do get the collective knowledge base of all of our folks in house, as well as all of our experiences and observations from working with other clients. So we have the opportunity to work with clients at various stages in the business cycle. So we might be working with a very mature business that has processes down and their systems in place, where a startup, maybe 3 years in, they might be 10 years away from that. So we can bring those experiences and observations to them when we talk about optimizing their operations. And specific to NetSuite on the platform, there's certain functionality of NetSuite that if you optimize and take advantage of it, you can really, whether it's fully automating particular functions that are normally human task oriented, or just utilizing the system in the appropriate way that we're just efficient and effective to maximize the time that it's taking to get the work done.
You're almost describing the ability to supercharge that area of expertise to bring it to bear in terms of getting the job done. What are maybe some of the other benefits that your clients get as well in looking to this model rather than bringing the resources in house?
It really allows them to focus on their core companies, focusing on being innovative, running their business, and let the experts take care of the accounting, the reporting, the compliance, and really allows them again to focus on growing the business, and optimizing their business and letting a specialist handle the accounting aspects.
Now, one of the topics we talk about a lot with different guests is how the Office of Finance has really evolved over the years from back office, but also to being more front and center, data driven decisions and driving more of the strategy of the business. Sometimes that requires being in the business day in and day out. How have you evolved in terms of being able to respond to that and help keep finance as a strategic function for the clients that you serve?
We built out a methodology over time with our experience and observations in working with previous clients to onboard in such a way that we really understand the business itself. So we go through process walkthroughs to really understand what are the inputs, throughputs, and outputs of the business. Obviously, that's critical to understand how the operations of a company eventually get into the finance system. And we always keep the end in mind as well. How do we evaluate the business? What are the key metrics we need to look at to understand the results financially of the business? And then you set up or optimize your accounting function to capture the information in such a way that you can get the reporting and you can get the insights from your business. And so that's a critical role that we play. And we often come in initially just to help get the books closed or improve a payables process or whatever it might be. But the reality is, we usually identify processes, sometimes operational processes that need to be improved to get the results that we're really looking for to drive that value.
When I think about for my career how fractional models have contributed to scalability of an organization, I think about it in terms of the journey of where a company is at. So, for instance, when you're in the startup mode, how you may need to outsource just about everything because you can't maybe even afford more than one or two people, and yet you have a lot of different jobs to be done. I think there's other times where maybe the company is in rapid growth mode and you can't hire quickly enough, or there's something specific you need NetSuite expertise for a project, and so there's times and places for that to fit in. And then similarly, you talked about in current climate where maybe companies are there, it's really tough to find talent. How do you think about it in terms of how this model helps a business to scale along the way?
Couple of ways, for businesses in the maybe sub $50 million range, it often doesn't make business sense to fully staff an accounting department for what you really need, right? To close the books timely and accurately, maintain compliance, internal controls, things of that nature. So what often happens is somebody, for example, a controller, right? And you hear this a lot. Well, they wear many hats. What that really means is a controller is probably, doing some payables functions. They're posting cash receipts for AR, and they're doing bank reconciliations in addition to the more strategic role that they're supposed to play. So that often leads to just a mismatch in the title versus the responsibilities that and the tasks that they're performing. And that really is a challenge, especially in growing organizations, because again, um, you either can't afford, or I would say it doesn't make business sense to to hire and fully staff a professional accounting operation. So by outsourcing fractional accounting services, you're really able to get exactly what you need, only pay for what you need. If you need 30% of a payables person, 40% of a accounts receivable task, and a senior accountant, you're able to buy exactly that and get exactly that. And it's risky in the initial scenario I talked about to have, say, a controller that is performing some of these other tasks, because that's really not what they want to be doing and spending their time, and they're probably not feeling like they're being utilized the right way. They're not being fulfilled in their role, and you run the risk of them looking elsewhere. So that's one scenario. Another scenario might be in rapid growth mode, or in an industry that might see some seasonality. So you see peaks and valleys in the transactional flow. And it's really hard to understand, do I need one or two accounts payable people, for example? Right. And so you inevitably end up with either having somebody overworked and getting burnt out, or underutilized and not really getting the benefit out of what you're paying them for. And so the fractional accounting model or outsource model um, can solve for that problem. Again, you pay for exactly what you need. If you need 1.2 of an FTE, that's what you get. That's what you pay for, and you get the job done.
And in that example you just gave, where maybe it's more than enough work for one, but not quite enough for two, Do you usually see where your clients then would outsource the whole function to you, or would they have the one person in house and you'd be supplementing the 0.25 of the extra work that needs to be done?
We're set up to be able to accommodate both, and I really do see both. Often, it might start with them keeping that one person in house, and then augmenting or outsourcing, the additional work, and that could work as well. But often that morphs into just outsourcing the entire function because they do realize that even at times you need less than one FTE in that particular role for that skill set. And so it does optimize the work being done by outsourcing on a fractional basis.
And have you found that sometimes when you get in there and through optimizing the process, you actually find it ends up needing less resource than what was originally thought to be needed?
Yeah, that's another good point. There's often low hanging fruit when we walk into an organization, whether there's some technology and automation that we can build into the process, optimizing, NetSuite, or just simply improving the process itself, right, of data flow to where we ultimately reduce the level of effort needed, um, and are able to do a better job in doing so.
And let's talk about NetSuite for just a minute in particular, because my experience with NetSuite has been it's often one of the found what I consider the core foundational systems. You might have 100 pieces of technology, but there's some that become your core building blocks that you fundamentally want to make sure that you've got the integrity and you've thought through how it's going to work with the rest of the tech stack and the ecosystem. How do you assist with that, or how do you think about where NetSuite plays in terms of that overall technology stack? Do you agree with it being typically a core boulder because it's an ERP system? And do you help your clients figure out how to make it work in the context of the whole tech stack?
Yeah, absolutely. NetSuite's a very powerful tool if it's set up and used properly. We also often talk about that single source of truth. So there's usually other systems that come into play when operating a business, right? It could be a point of sale system. It could be CRM if you happen to be using that. NetSuite has the ability to integrate to these other systems as well, and but the architecture of the entire system needs to be set up to where you're confident in the data, right? So NetSuite can be that single source of truth if it's set up properly to connect to the operating systems within the organization, to collect all the information, have visibility across different departments within one platform, and that's really powerful when it's set up appropriately.
Let's turn over into talking about how to make, if a leader's decided this is the way they want to go, how to best make this a really strong partnership. So, if it's, let's say, a CFO or finance team has decided that this is a model they want to go about exploring, what should they be thinking about when considering the right partner for them?
Yeah, it's a really important decision. So there's a couple things. You need to find the right partner, the partner that has experienced folks. You don't want to be training your outsourced accounting partner on your dime, right? So, for example, we don't have anyone right out of school. That's just not necessarily that's not our hiring profile. So our junior accountants, let's say, have minimum of 5 to 7 years experience. So you're not training them on the job. So they're bringing that experience to the table, and you also want to have platform expertise. So for us, it's NetSuite. That's the platform that we operate on. But whatever system you're on, you want both the CPAs and the platform expertise, because often it's it's not just the accounting process itself, the debits and credits and so forth. It's understanding how to utilize the system, how to dig in to the purchasing module, for example, right? To really understand. what might have implications to accounting, but you need to be able to use the system effectively and efficiently to be effective at the job.
Can you talk about any innovative approaches that you might be seeing some of your clients using in terms of how to best work with their outsourced partner and integrating them into their finance team?
One thing is to just be honest, meaning if your books are a mess, for lack of better phrases, it probably took you a little while to get there, right? If you don't have processes in place. And so be honest about them to let them come in, let your outsourced accounting partner come in and help you evaluate where the improvements need to be made. And then have a little bit of patience. If it did take you a little while to get into the situation, it's probably not going to be fixed overnight. And communication is critical as well. So having that communication in the partnership is critical to let your outsourced accounting partner do their job most effectively and really realize the value.
And in places where you've seen it get off to a rocky start, what, with hindsight, as you've learned along the way, would you say are some of the things that cause that to happen that companies should try to avoid?
I think it all goes back to communication and really expectations up front. So really being aligned. Um, so I think it's four things I think come to mind. It's communication, documentation, alignment, and then the governance. So communication, uh, I don't want to say you can't have too many meetings, but you need to have you need to be on the same page. You need to update each other. And if you don't get to a point in a recurring meeting where there might be some boring parts because you you talked about that last week and nothing's changed, it's just that means it's working, right? And so effective communication, of course, documentation of the processes and really alignment on what the expectations are, what the deliverables are, and then governance in the sense of who's doing what, the roles and responsibilities. It's very clear that everyone understands who's doing what in the organization, whether in-house or at your outsourced partner.
And when you are engaged to help specifically with an implementation of the ERP system, what are some of the common challenges that you find, and what would be ways you suggest mitigating against those?
Well, implementation's a huge endeavor. It's something that you hope to only do once, or at least once a decade, let's say. And so, really, is being able to dedicate the time that it takes to really do it right. So, you need to bring in the appropriate subject matter experts for throughout the organization. It's not just the accounting and finance group. It's operations, sales, marketing. If you're really implementing, ERP, you need to get the input and the gaps from all the different business units within an organization, and then take the time to work with your implementation partner or your outsourced accounting partner, um, so they can understand your business goals and your objectives and what problems you're having achieving those objectives. It usually comes down to people, process, and technology. So we really need to understand, again, what the business does, what all the operational components of the business, and then design and implement NetSuite and the accounting processes in a way that captures the information so you can have an accurate and timely accounting close.
And are there any recommendations you have for clients in terms of KPIs or metrics they should be looking at to assess how well this relationship is working?
So time to close the books is paramount, and that's a critical one. Obviously, easy to measure. We often eventually in time cut in half the time it takes to close the books for our clients by improving the processes. So that's one thing. DSO, day sales outstanding. I know there's a lot of accounting folks that are probably listening and watching this, so I'll have to explain exactly what that means. But that's another metric. So how effective is your dunning or your collections process? There are ways to optimize that process within an accounting department or possibly automate function, within your ERP or your accounting system to improve that process. And you can measure that with reduced, DSO. Um, Maybe an indirect KPI could be inventory turns. If your accounting is timely and accurate and you can get that insight quickly that you need, you can identify, hey, if something is slipping, or if our inventory levels need to be looked at, or our purchasing cadence or timing. And then that'll help improve your working capital as well. And so when you add all those things up, if you optimize those, um, you should be saving some interest from your bank because you're optimizing your working capital, or you're improving, working capital. So those are some of the metrics and some of the KPIs that you can measure your outsourced accounting partner with.
I think those are some good ones. And then when I also think about the intangible, maybe not as easy to measure, but when I think about almost any company that I might be partnering with as a business, that value add piece, I think, is something that I'm always thinking about. What besides just the core job to be done am I getting from this partner that really demonstrates that they have that expertise? They know my business, and I'm getting insights that I otherwise wouldn't maybe be getting if not for this relationship. I think that's the icing on the cake in terms of helping really cement that this is the right partner, because they get my business and are really bringing to bear that experience that they have to my benefit as a business. I'm guessing that you try to do that as well wherever possible with some of your clients.
Yeah, I think that goes to, again, early on in the engagement, really um, letting the outsourced accounting partner really understand your business, right? Understand what the objectives are, how you measure and quantify the success of your business. Because again, accounting, people often think of it as scorekeeping and backwards looking, but really you need to be able to capture the data in a way that the FP&A team or the finance leaders can slice and dice that information to get meaningful insight from it. So I think that's the ultimate value from an outsourced accounting partner um, would be, I guess, easier, more timely, and more insightful financial results that, say, the CFO or the FP&A team can take um, and then drive meaningful insights from.
So you talked just there about FP&A teams, and I'm curious, how common is it for a finance team to think about outsourcing FP&A, or is it more traditionally accounting where you see the outsourcing?
I think it's less common to outsource the FP&A function, at least in my experience, and that could be because the FP&A team is often working very closely on forward-looking strategic plans of the operation. And I think accounting is a little bit more suited to be able to outsource as a model.
And so, as we look ahead in terms of where we are today and how you see the fractional model working, and where it might be going or how you see it evolving, what are some of your predictions there?
Well, I only see the trend growing, at least for the foreseeable future. And, employment trends are changing, and they have been for several years, with remote work being a little more common, certainly more common than it used to. The need for data-driven financial information coming from the office of the CFO, with technology changing is only going to grow. So being able to leverage an outsourced model to get that expertise, not both in from the technical accounting side of it, as well as the systems and the platform side, I only see that growing. And then secondarily, um, it just seems to be a continued challenge to attract and incentivize top accounting professionals to stay within private industry. And that's for several reasons. I mean, I think that unless you're a rapidly growing organization, I think it really is tough to incentivize, a rock star accounting or finance professional. Whether it's they'll run out of challenges, maybe you get through the audit, great. That's awesome. What's your next challenge? Okay, I got to close quarter one. I got to close the next month. Um, if you're not again, rapidly growing, acquiring. It may be tough to, again, incentivize and keep top talent around. Um, and it's tough to replace someone, the disruption that it brings when you're trying to find a replacement, and just falling further behind in that scenario. That's a risk. And so I really think the effectiveness of the outsourcing model um, is substantial, and I think it's here to stay.
And you touched on as well the changes in the way that we work, more and more remote work. How has that factored into what you've seen in terms of fractional model?
I think business owners and executives are becoming more open to the model. I mean, we're 100% remote based, and a lot of outsourced firms are, because of the nature of the operation and because of the trend of the workforce becoming more remote. It just opened up the willingness to consider an outsourced model. So I think people are open to it. More people now than previously are even considering it. Again, which just lends, I think, to the sustained growth of the outsourced accounting model.
Yeah, it's interesting that you just mentioned that because I think often about how the world of how we work has changed so much. And in so many ways, it's been for the better and had such positive impacts. But this is one area where I hadn't, until just now when you said that, really thought about how it's also that change in the way we work might have changed the openness and willingness to look at these different kinds of models like you're suggesting. When I think about what's the time and place for these models, and at a certain point, if the workload's enough, then often it makes sense to bring these roles in-house. But what are your thoughts in terms of when does a business potentially on their journey outgrow the need for an outsourced model, and would it make sense for them to bring those resources in-house?
I think if you're working with the right outsourced accounting partner, it really doesn't make sense to bring this function back in house. Again, because of the risk of turnover is great, and again, leveraging the expertise of the outsourced accounting firm and all that they bring to the table, you just don't have the luxury of having that in house.
Donnie, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this topic. Now, whenever we do have a guest, we have two rapid fire questions that we'd like to ask. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The first one is, what is the best piece of business or leadership advice that you've ever received?
Hmm. I would say best piece of leadership advice is to really understand your strengths and weaknesses so that you can surround yourself by people that complement you and even pick up areas where you might be weak. So really take the time to understand that, be self reflective to understand what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, so you can build a very complementary team around you.
And the next question is, what is something that you do in your personal life that helps you show up as your best self in your work life?
I'd say for me, it's either a workout or a sauna session in the morning. And that really helps me clear my head, kind of focus, and really set the stage and set my attention for the day, so I can be effective and really focus and and get the work done without being distracted.
Sounds like it's fair to say that you're an early riser then if you're getting your workouts in the morning before you set your day. So that's a good habit to have.
Yes, I'm definitely an early riser. I
Donnie, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really been a pleasure having you on the show.
appreciate it, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to learn more about today's topic, please visit the links in the show notes. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review on any of the streaming platforms. We always love to hear from you, and it helps other listeners to find the show. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. You don't want to miss an episode. For the CFO Show, I'm your host, Melissa Howitson. Until next time.